the Salcomp School Council meeting. My name is Jackie Surgener. I am your chair this year. And I'd just like to start by acknowledging with respect the history and culture of the peoples with whom Treaty 6 was signed and the land upon which Elk Island Public School resides. We acknowledge the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. We recognize our responsibility as treaty members and honor the heritage and gifts of the First People. We commit to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation. So I know this is really awkward in a digital platform, but I'd like to go through and just have everybody introduce themselves. We have lots of time on the agenda. Just I think it's really kind of an important part of kind of getting to know each other and building that. So typically when I do this, nobody answers. So I'm just going to pull up my people list and call you one by one, and you can just introduce yourselves, if you have what your tie is to Salisbury, and what brought you here tonight other than an obligation, which is Sunny and Karen. Hopefully there's something better than that. So I'll start with Andrea.
Hello, I'm Andrea Monez. I have a student in grade 10. This is my second time back at Sal, so glad to be back. And it's a way for being part of parent council and band parents is a way for me to stay connected with the school on behalf of my high schooler, because it gets harder when they get older.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I told mine, I'm like, hey, guess what? We get to pick a baby photo, and she's like, we? I'm like, oh, we. But I can just send it in if you'd like. So.
Turn the volume up on this fucking phone.
Annette.
On the phone.
Hi there, Annette Hubick, your school board trustee liaison. I literally just walked through the door about 10 minutes ago from a marathon board meeting, a caucus meeting today. So I was just furiously updating my report for a couple of things that came up today, but be ready to go. And I have 2 future Sabres that are at Lakeland right now.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, Brenda.
Hi there, it's Brenda Oliveris here. I have 2 sons at Sal, one in grade 12 and one in grade 11. What brought me tonight is I really enjoyed the last month's parent council meeting, and I'm not going to lie, I was more interested in the athletic side of things, but I wanted to get back involved and see what the last few months here is going to show for us. So thank you.
Well, thanks for coming. Carrie.
Hello. Hi, my name's Carrie Rhodes.
Hi.
And my son is in 12th grade, Tom. And very interested tonight to hear about the post-secondary piece and what we need to do and look into getting into that. So that's our main objective for tonight.
Oh, thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Heather.
Always have to find the mute button. Heather Contango, my daughter's in grade 12 at Sal. It's her first year here, and she just rounded out her first courses and had a great experience. So I'm just happy to participate and learn more about the community.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. Jen, hi.
Hi, I'm Jen. I've got a son in grade 11 and a daughter who will be attending Sal next year. Last month, I volunteered for, was it the Council of Student Councils? I don't even know what it was called that I volunteered for, but I attended.
School councils.
Thank you. A big meeting, and I'm pretty excited to share what I learned at that one. So that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Karen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Schlegel. I work at Sal. I've been at Sal for 17 years, and I am the general secretary, and I help out Sunny and the admin team. And I'm here to record and learn what's going on.
Perfect. Awesome. Krista, hi. Thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Krista Porter, and I'm one of the assistant principals at Sal. I work with the grade 11 grade group. I also have a son who is in grade 12 at Sal.
Oh, fantastic. Look at you go. I'm sure he loves that. Leanne.
Hi, my name's Leanne Kudrynewski. I have a son in grade 12, Jace, and I wanted to hear what Principal Sandhu had to say about the trades. He said he was going to be talking about that and post-secondary education, so I was just interested in that.
Oh, fantastic. Misty. Misty, do you want to introduce yourself? I don't know if you're talking, you might be on mute.
There, now can you hear me?
Yeah, now we're good.
It wouldn't let me unmute myself. Hi,
Oh,
I'm
no.
Misty Bierke, and I have a daughter in grade 12. And really, I'm just looking kind of to see everything that's happening with all the changes with COVID and everything else. So I'm trying to just kind of keep on top of everything, especially with grad coming. So
Perfect, thanks. Shauna. Hi, Shauna.
Hi, Jackie. Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna. I have a daughter in grade 11. And yeah, when I read through the agenda, I was interested in hearing quite a few of Mr. Sandhu's updates. Thanks.
Fantastic. That's great. Mr. Sandhu's updates were, I'm like, here, I'd like you to talk about these 5 things, please. So that's awesome. Sunny.
Yeah, Study Sandhu, principal and class principal here at Sal. It's my second year back. I spent close to 5 years here, 2010 to about 15 as assistant principal. Had a chance to be principal of next class, principal at Fort High, and it's great to be back. And I want to thank everyone for here today. And it's neat to see the increase in parent engagement. So yeah, it's going to be a good conversation. So I'm excited for tonight to share and to converse.
Perfect. Thanks. Tasha.
Hi, I'm Tasha Baker. My daughter is in grade 12 at Sal. Just coming to make sure that I keep informed with everything that's going on at the school, as well if there is any help that the school needs that I'm able to do, then I can find that out too.
Oh, perfect. And I saw Rebecca snuck in. So Rebecca, we're just introducing ourselves and what brought us here tonight.
Hi, this is Rebecca Ho. My son's just in grade 10. Just looking to see what's happening.
Oh, perfect. Good to see you back. It says unknown, so I don't know who that is. Okay, I don't see them unmuting. So if you want to introduce yourself, just you can unmute and interrupt me. That's fine. Like I mentioned, my name is Jackie Surgener. I have a daughter in grade 12 and a son in grade 11, and then I have another one coming in another like 4 or 5 years. So I think I'll just be here forever. So welcome and thanks for taking the time out tonight. I'm kind of excited to hear about some of the updates on some of these agenda items. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to switch over to chat. Is there anyone, first of all, who is interested in doing minutes for tonight? Karen and I kind of hobbled together some minutes. It was mostly Karen because I typed something brilliant and I can't figure out where I saved it. So Karen did a fantastic job last time with that. Is there anyone who's interested in doing that? And otherwise, we'll hobble something together. Okay. So are there any additions or that you want to the agenda that isn't on there already? So I think what we'll do is instead of asking everyone to vote for things, we use a consensus model anyway. I'll just say, are there any major objections to adopting the agenda as presented? Then if there are, speak up or you can throw it in the chat. Okay, so it looks pretty good, thanks. The minutes are on the school website. I don't know if anyone had a chance to take a look at them or if there's anything there. Karen did a fabulous job pulling out stuff, and it always sends me like a very detailed list. So they're fairly comprehensive, but we can come back to that too, and maybe at the end and just see if people have had a chance to read them. I'll get more organized throughout the year. So moving to new business, one of the things that is in legislation for school councils to advise the principal on is the school year is a school education plan. So SAL has 3 school education goals. We had a lengthy discussion, I know a couple of years ago with Mrs. Allen. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Sunny to talk about those goals. We can provide any input that we have, as well as our plan throughout the year is to bring different aspects of those goals back for discussion so that parents understand what they're doing and what we as a school council can do to support that. So that's sort of I think one of the principal roles of a school council is to support the school education plan. So that'll probably come back multiple times throughout the year, but I'm just going to turn it over to Sunny in a second. I was excited because as we're going through this, I'm sitting in his office, and goal 3 is all about preparing students and their families for post-secondary. So I'm like, oh, I have something for you. So that's part of the reason that we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Is I think there's lots of stuff that we can share with parents, because I think sometimes the kids get the knowledge. They maybe pick that up here and there around school about how to apply and stuff like that. I don't know that knowledge always hits the parents, because I think they stop talking to us sometime around about 13. So just making sure that we are all kind of on the same page is why we're going to start talking about like some of that stuff is that we all understand too. So Sunny, you want to talk about our school education plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Jackie. And ultimately, school ed plans are some documents that do absolutely evolve. There's a high level of ties to our division goals. But exactly to your point, we need engagement from our stakeholders when we make them. Our current school ed plan runs from the year 2018 to 2022. And, for me, having the history being here in 2010, I know how the school's evolved. We talk about data informed decision making. Sometimes say, hey, the school is great, but what does that mean? Or the school has challenges. What does that mean? And I think in today's world, as we know, be it public or private sector, we are guided by the data, and it does help us make decisions moving forward. So what I'll do, and you can see how much it is valuable. I just didn't put that up in preparation for tonight's meeting, but the school goals are in my office. And we do believe that they should be transparent. We do believe that parents should understand as well as our staff and student body. But I could read it out in terms of students demonstrate accountability, compassion, integrity, and respect, and have a sense of belonging at Salisbury. In layman's words, our school goal 1 is really around student engagement. When I was here in 2010, and we have a document called the accountability pillar. And then it really guides and talks about overall school results and how are we doing as a school. And for us though too in 2010, it's great to be saber red, right? Saber red. But when you see red on an accountability pillar, that means that the school has some challenges or could potentially be at risk. And so a decade ago, when we looked at safe and caring data in this building, we were red. And so we needed to be intentional in terms of what we're doing to create a safe and caring school. We know that connection and fostering effective relationships is paramount in a high-functioning school. So hence the reason why that sense of belonging for kids is very critical. While we are advocating for return to sport, fine arts, musical theater, band, we also understand safety, etc. But you don't have to be an athlete or in musical theater to have in drama, and the list goes on, a debate club, and be a part of clubs to have a sense of belonging. So what do? Some certain strategies when we're doing supervision, which we like to call interaction. Instead of a supervision, we talk about interaction. We look for those kids that are eating lunch on their own, or some kids that maybe don't have a friend group. And we're intentional about finding them their place at Salisbury. And I'm real pleased. And I talked about the Parent Saver scene, where I'll be starting to share the snippets of data in the Parent Saver scene to show the link. And in the last decade, our safe and caring data has really gone up. So the engagement piece is very important. And in 10 years here, we have come a long way. So that's the reason why it is a goal. It is a division goal of sense of belonging. And some of the results like dropout rate. We have a very low dropout rate here at Salisbury when you compare it to other schools in the province. So what does that mean? for our at-risk students, right? We're turning them into at-promise students. And that is an absolute goal. Ultimately, yeah, and what I'll do, guys, I'll kind of go through each goal, like each one of our school ed plan goals, and then let's open it up for conversation and that sort of thing. And I'll look at the chat group. So student engagement, sense of belonging, coming to school, having their go-tos, feeling comfortable with self, having the ability for students to be able to be proactive and ask questions. That's really what that means. Ultimately, student engagement is also, something in the classroom that ties into our second goal, which I'll get to in a bit. But when we look at engagement, sense of belonging, I think the school has done a good job. Now, I can say I think that, but our data here does support that. And I will talk in the principal report about result review. I think Trustee Hubik will talk about that as well in November. But this is what we're accountable for. And ultimately, that's our first goal. Now, I'm going to open this up now for conversation, and you can ask questions. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat.
We're good.
Okay, so I guess questions around student engagement. Does that make sense in terms of what it means? That connection to the school, connection to adults in the building, making sure. And then, again, students do talk in accountability pillar about how they feel about the school, how connected they are. And over the last decade, we've gone like this. So in my hand, I've got our safe and caring results. It's just a snapshot. And Jackie's well versed. I mean, this is over a 100-page document, accountability pillar. But when I break it down, safe and caring, we have higher results here. We maintained last year our very high results, and our overall is still in the good category. So that's our first goal, division goal. School goal, but it has ties to our division as well. I guess I'll open it up. I'll take a little bit of a pause before we go to school goal number 2. Any questions or feedback?
Hey, Sonny.
Hello.
Hi, Kerry Rhodes. I may have missed this, but could you tell me how you measure, how do you determine your engagement?
It's a number of questions. So every February, for example, all of our students will do the accountability pillar. And it's a series of questions coming from Alberta Education. And, it talks about that, right? Like I have, a close connection to an adult in the building. I have pride in my school. And it goes through a number and a series of questions. Similar on the other end, right? Parent engagement data. You guys get that letter in the mail and you log in. Across the board in high schools, in this division, we know that we're really trying to get our parent engagement up. But to be honest with you, Mr. Rhodes, it's really that part of survey taking and getting the results back and then comparing it longitudinally and over years. So it's surveys and objective data.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Carrie, when Sunny talks about the accountability pillar, you'll have seen it. Parents receive it for students in grades. If you have a student in grade 4, 7, or 10, you also fill in that data. As well, in the past, Elk Island Public Schools has recognized that doesn't give them a full picture. So they often, for the past several years anyway, have done one for all parents. And what they've said, like I have 3 kids, they say fill it in once for each kid at their school for their experience, because we know that different schools look different and that sometimes it's even different. Each kid, even in the same school, may have a different experience. And so Sunny, Heather did a shout out to Mr. McDonald, who intentionally took her kid under his wing and helped her be excited about school again. So I'm hoping that you'll take that back to Mr. McDonald.
Absolutely. And those things are sometimes tough to measure. I mean, Heather coming into a new building and a student coming into grade 12, and we know moving's not easy, right? Coming to a new school for our grade 9s to 10s, but this is what it's about. That connection and fostering effective relationship is paramount. So philosophically, we know that has to happen for everything else to happen. We're talking about post-secondary later. We're talking about transition from grade 9 to 10. We're talking about a lot of things. But if you don't have safe and caring, it's very difficult to achieve, the other goals that we have. We're intentional too. I call it our success team here, where it's our administration, our guidance. And we want to meet every 2 to 3 weeks. And we don't want to talk about facility stuff, financial stuff, political stuff. The success team meeting is about students, right? Who are we losing? Who are we missing? Whose baseline behavior is out? What do we got to do? What do we have to be strategic in helping those kids? So I think as a school, we're really focused. And sometimes, I'll look over my shoulder. How are we doing? I have a whiteboard in front of me, or it's talking about different data points. So, while there's that objective component, we talk about cultures in school where you can feel it when you walk in a building. How do you measure that? How do you measure feeling, right? But I do know one thing, and obviously I'm biased as principal, but the feeling in this building, I think it's come a long way since when I first came in 2010 and left and had a chance to really re-immerse myself in the Sabre community. So that's kind of where we're at with goal number 1. Other questions?
Other questions about that before I make a comment? So, Sunny, I'm reading Heather's shout out to Mr. McDonald, and certainly I have one too. Mr. McDonald showed up last Friday night to watch my daughter and my niece's soccer game, and they thought that was fantastic, right? Just he taught. He doesn't even teach Kayla this year. He teaches Hannah, but he's taught Kayla for a couple of years, and so they both saw him in the stands. I didn't notice him, but I was busy. But I'm wondering if we couldn't set up and we could put it out in the Sabre scene and through social media, a link to some kind of forum where we can gather some of those stories and we can celebrate them. We can celebrate them either on social media, you can celebrate them with the staff, because I think it's probably a pretty tough time right now, and we could use, I think as parents, we can't come into the school, we can't volunteer, we can do that, but maybe we can share some of the stories that we have about the successes that our kids are having because of the staff and that will help you. You can use some of those even in your accountability pillar, your accountability results, and just it's anecdotal, I recognize, but it's still, I think it would probably possibly go a long way.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I mean, it's something that we want to support our parents. And you can see in the parent Sabre scene, we've started to add a few things, but absolutely, if it's something where you want to give a few shout outs, it's great. It's great for, we have lots of Mr. McDonald's here, to my mind. And
for sure. So I'm just wondering what parents on the call think about doing something like that, and for the purpose of compiling some of those stories to share. What does everyone think about that? I have one. Mr. Pandos has been amazing. My daughter has him for bio again this year. He's her favorite teacher. He gets the kids intrigued, keeps on top of things, works hard and cares. He's definitely there to help. I don't know about public recognition, but a recognition program of sorts would be great. Yeah. And certainly, I think it's a great idea. We're quick to complain. Sometimes it's important. And certainly we could ask as part of the forum, we could ask if we can share yours publicly. And people who want that could, and those who don't, we can honor that too, and it can just maybe shared with the teacher. Kudos for Sunny for coaching the junior boys team. Isaiah loved having you as a coach, and the extra time you put in the team was amazing. Aw. So I think that this would be it would be a good way to do a place to compliment teachers and mention best practice approaches to dealing with COVID restrictions and sick time. Yeah. The more we show teachers what a difference they make, the better. Okay, so it sounds like we have that. So Sunny and I'll work on whatever that looks like, because I think that would be good, and we can share it throughout the Sabre scene and gather it throughout the year, because I think that we can share some of those things would be phenomenal, right? And I think that I'm a former teacher. If that came from a parent, I know that would touch me, especially during hard times, right? You save that. Recognition will go a long way for staff morale right now. Even an email to a staff member who has had a positive effect on your child would be appreciated. Yeah. So I think I can write about something like that in the Sabre scene too. Awesome. You want to go on to number 2?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to goal 1, I'll read it out verbatim. Staff use evidence-based practice to enhance student learning. Layman's word, I use achievement. And simply put, the higher achievement, student achievement, leads to more opportunity for our kids. And we know that component though too. It doesn't mean that all of our students are going to go to university and become aeronautical engineers and doctors. But we have a burgeoning program with RAP, et cetera, and our IIB program. But we want to use evidence and best practice. So one of the things, coming back to Sal, similar to what I did as principal at Fort High, is really, really being intentional. And I'll give a few examples, right? Blueprinting. Blueprinting is very important. And what blueprinting is, I know that right now diploma exams are optional or voluntary for kids. But we feel strongly that in all 4 disciplines, English, science, social, math, there needs to be blueprinting. And it's working backwards. So if there's 33 questions on the Bio 30 diploma, we get breakdowns and analysis, again, using data. So question 1, we can see, hey, 87% of our kids got it right. We can tie that into the instruction. What instruction did we use as a department? Hey, that's working real well. Continue to go. The students are achieving and they're engaged in that. But maybe question 2, we see that 31% of our kids at SAL got that question right. Red flag, right? Red flag meaning that we've got to go back and trace the instruction. What were we doing right now to teach that component, that key learner outcome in the program of studies? And so we need to be not the wild, wild west doing all different things. We want to promote professional judgment, autonomy. But at the end of the day, though, too, achievement is something that we've been intentional about here. And same, I think Mr. Rhodes asked a question about, well, where do you get your data points? How is it measured? So this building, like every other building, you get your results on diploma exams, and you can see how you're doing. And with blueprinting, it really talks about where you are as a school and how your exams are matching up. So when we talk about differentiated instruction, differentiated assessment, there is a method to this, right? And you can break down diploma results tremendously. Our superintendent does a really good presentation around gender bias, right? Where class awarded mark and diploma mark. And it really puts things into perspective about internal biases. And I think, Jackie, you've heard that presentation before, and we've talked to our staff about it.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do a few of those presentations here. We had department heads. We don't have them anymore due to cutbacks. So admin has taken a lot on it, but we are instructional leaders. That's one of our quality standards as instructional leaders. But ultimately, though, too, there's many things that go into achievement. When I look at our trade programs here, there's lots of amazing things happening because we have a journeyman mechanics teacher who can provide RAP, dual credit, first-year journeyman. I'm going to talk more about that in a bit. But ultimately, though, too, I will say this, though, with data. Like, I can look at our results and I can say, wow, you know what? They're acceptable in some areas. We know we have room for improvement in others, and we're knocking it out of the park in this discipline. But here at Salisbury, though, too, we want students to take some risk. We want students sometimes, and it's going to sound a little bit harsh, but I'll explain myself after, to fail faster. So what does that mean? A kid gets 51% in English 10-1. There are schools that will timetable that student for their next year and say, kid, listen, you know what, go to -2. And results are important, and I know results review is very important. But when I was at Fort High, I'll give one example about this, though, too. We had a couple kids in Physics 20 that struggled. And they came to me and said, Mr. Sandu, what should I do? I got my grad requirements. What should I do? Now, if I was worried about the results review or always worried about this sheet of paper and their results in a class of 14, I might have said, hey, don't take that course. You got your grad requirements, you're okay. But what does data really show? By streaming up, you increase the likelihood of success. You teach resilience. Now, those 2 boys took Physics 30 and got crushed. They probably got 21%, 23% respectively. And it came up on our data, and I remember I was asked that question in results review, and that's exactly how I answered it. Sometimes it's okay for kids to fail. It's their first chance at learning, but it also promotes grit and resilience. And so achievement comes in many ways. It's not always that you're knocking out of the park with excellent rates. But in many ways, though, too, it's about students pushing themselves, trying to achieve. So here at SAL, we want to have that conversation about, hey, what is the right stream? But we will always allow students and families, if you have the prerequisite, to register for that class. Because sometimes, again, like I go back to, it's okay to fail sometimes. The key is, how do you respond? How do you try again? And resilience is one of those words, though. It's showing up more and more and more about success later on in life, right? So we look at best practices. 172 minutes is tough. I mean, even before, we had 86-minute classes, and that is tough for kids. We do not want teachers talking for 86 minutes straight. When lots of us went to school, it was the proverbial teacher goals, talks, and we're writing feverishly, taking notes. And I'll give one quick example, because there's a million of them, right? A science teacher could stand for and say, well, what's going to hit the floor first? A heavy ball or a light bulb, right? Some students will say the heavy one, someone will say the light. And at the end of the day, they both land on the floor at the same time because gravity pulls equally on both objects. Now, if I direct instruct that, a kid could write that test 2 days later and get it right. But later on in life, it's interesting, and this was done. It's called constructivism. We know what constructivism is. But when we talk about achievement, we talk about blueprinting. What's the best way to do that? And the best way to do that and show that for kids is to actually show them, right? They can do that lab. They can do that. And that's a 20-second activity. But years later, in their head, they will always remember that. So what I'm trying to communicate here, though, is that achievement and the way we teach is always evolving. We're always trying to get better. And I think, staff culture here, it's okay to agree to disagree, as long as we say good morning. But we have some real strong leaders and instructional leaders. And we need to look at how are we instructing. And sometimes it can be a sensitive subject, but we do have a responsibility for our students to achieve, because we know the higher achieving all of our students can be, the more opportunity they will have post high school, which I'll talk about in a bit. So trying to tie in a few things about what we do as a school, how we're being intentional, while direct instruction is important, the proverbial teacher at the kind of like Ferris Bueller, where the teacher's talking and everyone's just looking, eyes glazed over type thing, where it does tie to engagement as well. We want our students to be engaged in classroom. We want our classes to be dynamic. We want to be ever evolving and getting better. But it's very important achievement. And that school goal number 2 here does tie into division goal as well. So I'll do similar what I did to school goal 1. I'll take a break, a pause, open up for some conversation.
Sorry, I turned my microphone off because I had a kid come in. Is there any feedback or comments on goal 2?
Sunny, if I can just comment.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you and your staff and your admin are recognizing that it's okay for students to fail. I think all too often now, the only thing that young students ever fail at is swimming lessons. So when they come up to adversity, they really struggle. So I appreciate the fact that you are helping them learn that if they fail, it's okay. It's the getting up and trying again that's the most important.
No, it's interesting, Jen. We had at the elementary where my kid goes, we had this conversation about resilience in the 3-year ed plan. That's actually a school goal, is to build that resilience, because what they say is the average age that children live in your house, they move out at about age 27, and it's getting older. And so, I'm like, I'd like them gone before they're 27.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Yeah, no, they're gone earlier than that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's great if we can do that in safe ways, right?
There's an excellent book out by Angela Duckworth. It's called Grit, right? And it's something that really resonates because and it's all the words, the persevering through adversity, and that's really something that's not just school based. There's lots of things that go into persevering through adversity, but the resilience to get back up. And so while we have absolutely, and I will say this, we do have areas we need to improve as a school and disciplines, and that is transparent, and that's why we will be sharing specific points. Jackie, that 160-page document in snippets we'll be sharing with our school community each week. So I think for our parents to become better informed as to where we are, what our challenges are, and the support we need to wrap around for our staff to be better.
Yeah. Sure, I'd love a copy of that.
Hi, it's Heather. I just had a question about the data that you were using. You said from the grade 12 blueprinting. I'm just curious about how that affects grade 10 instruction. Like, does it cascade down 3 years? Do you use different data to inform those kind of teaching methods, or is it just the grade 12 stuff that you rely on?
No, it's a good question. You kind of broke out a little bit, but hopefully I picked up most of it. But no, it's not just our diploma exams we blueprint. It's also like, let's use Science 10 as an example. I'm on Science team right now. Let's use Science 10 as an example. So even for our assessments though too, right? Like Science 10 is broken down into chemistry, physics, biology, and the environment, okay? So, for us though too, we will look at unit exams, and that's the thing of our practice, and we need to be intentional as teachers and staff and our EAs, etc. So when we do our chemistry unit exam, let's blueprint that exam. And sometimes we can say in physics, hey, the student doesn't know how to isolate a variable. It's becoming very apparent by blueprinting the exam. So then how much time do we spend on this, right? Well, we kind of uncovered it's better to do math 10 before science, because then, hey, that kind of negates this issue we're having. In the chemistry unit, how to balance a chemical equation. If you can't balance a chemical equation on question 10, then questions 11 to 19 are going to be very difficult. So Heather, to answer your question, it's really a high school one. And, we have lots of junior highs that feed us, Lake, Clanchard Heights, Culver Bar, and the list goes on. And so ultimately the junior highs are doing great work in preparing the kids for high school and academia. But it really starts from everything we do, starting in grade 10 here. English, science, social, math, and then the list goes on for our option courses as well, to see where the challenges are and how we can increase achievement. Does that answer your question, Heather?
Yes, thank you.
So maybe as part of future meetings, Sunny, we can talk a little bit about what some of those best practices are so that we as parents understand and can support them. I know there's certainly always ones, and it hits various school council agendas that I've done, is on why we allow students to rewrite, and because it's certainly different than like we wrote. It was one and done when most of us went to school, and that's a large educational philosophical change that came that was sort of starting to hit when I was leaving teaching, so about 15, 18 years ago. But I think understanding that is, when we've had that conversation, it's been really interesting, I think, for parents to get that, right? So we can look at some of those kind of things that you want parents to help understand.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I just gave a quick example, like gravity demonstration, right? Because when we went to school, maybe it was about just it's straight notes, read the textbook, right? Read the textbook notes, and not always like that. But see, even engagement is huge, right? We want students to be engaged. We often heard teachers, I got to cover the curriculum. I only have X amount of time. Teachers working feverishly, covering the curriculum. But to my mind, a really good class is while along the teacher covering the curriculum, students are uncovering the curriculum and they're discovering the learning. And that's when it gets real awesome, right? And students are excited to go to class, and that's the part. So yeah, the teacher factor is there, but if you have a real engaging class, you will find students to uncover curriculum, regardless of the number of minutes, right? So absolutely, I use the gravity example as really just a snippet, but moving forward, we can throw some more examples. And one of the things though too is to have teachers come into our next school council meeting and talk about some of the things they're doing in the classroom as well.
Oh, that would be fantastic. And it'd be really interesting, and certainly part of high school councils, and I forgot to talk to you about this, is having students attend. So even if we had a student attend, and it can be a different one, just they can talk a little bit about, kind of their experiences is always good too. We can give them an opportunity to share.
Yeah, we did that at Fort High, and it was great when we were in the same room, but this will work too. I mean, it's great to see the number of people here today, and we can absolutely open it up. Perfect.
You want to move to goal 3?
All right, so similar to before, I'll read it out. Students are equipped to make informed decision-making regarding their advancement through high school and beyond. And the direct tie to the division goal is success beyond school. So twofold. While it's great that students get their high school diploma, we also know students need prerequisites, to get to where they want to be. And then it does tie to number 2 and number 1 for that fact about achievement engagement. But we need to be intentional. We need to be more intentional about how we're preparing our students. Jackie, I think you hit it right on. In many ways, we'll put stuff in our announcements. We'll say, hey, Grant Mac is here. Come to the library. Obviously, this is before, the pandemic. But parents don't always understand that. But one of the things that's really, really, really grown here at Salisbury is our CTS programming. So for example, and I'll go into more depth here though as well, because we have a journeyman mechanics teacher, journeyman who has their ticket, it opens up so much opportunity. And we have students now coming from different parts of boundaries because of this factor. If you have a journeyman as a teacher, students can get their first year apprenticeship, their first 1,000 hours it's a money saving, it's a time saving. Last year we had 12 kids write their dual credit, meaning in high school they're already getting credit for kind of trades work, right? We have strong partnerships. So for our mechanics, we have Cal Tire, who not only sponsors the program, their skilled guys comes in and works alongside. We have our kids working at Cal Tire, getting paid, having a plan for what they want to do. And mechanics is going really, really well, because if you have in your schools, and this is not easy to find, right? It's not that there's a ton of journeymen with their teacher certificates in this province, but knowing one thing, and Kathy and I remain close. She was my principal when I was assistant principal here, and even when I was principal at Fort High, we'd have lots of conversations. But philosophically, we know the importance of our CTS to have those skills. We know the importance of sponsorship in the community. So similar and likewise, we got a Canadian Welders Association grant that really helps support our fabrication students. So when you look at sponsorship and the ticket and RAP, Registered Apprenticeship Program, we can do lots of things in-house because we can sign off on things in-house. School B, if you don't have that mechanics teacher, it's not the same opportunity. Even though you have great infrastructure and can offer Mechanics 30, the journeyman is the X factor. So similar to our culinary arts program or commercial foods, we have a Red Seal chef. That's huge because we already got RAP students getting credits for RAP and their first year at NAIT. And so it's been very intentional here to get sponsorship. Our cosmetology program as well, partnerships with Marvell, and kids that are able to jump right out of high school. I know it's a tough time. We all know it's a tough time for that matter. The economy and jobs, etc. But I will say this, we still are getting placements where, if you're interested in RAP, we're going to sign you up. It doesn't happen overnight. We have to individualize a program. But it's amazing to see how our RAP numbers, which I will start to share the number of kids that are doing RAP, which has gone up lots, the number of kids that are placed in the CTS world. So that's something where we are getting kids now. They know exactly what they want to do. I was talking to a grade 11 student today. It's like, Mr. Sandu already got my Mechanics 30 done. He's already got his first year done because he's starting grade 10. He's one of those kids that knew exactly what he wanted to do. Now, we all know though too, students might have a plan, but it can shift 9 times. And that's okay too. I mean, some people on this call, it's a proverbial, I still don't know what I want to do type joke, right? But we do have a responsibility to have students inform, the decision making and helping them along the way. One of the things we did, we increased our counseling time here at Sal. And counseling sometimes can be a misnomer or maybe a word where people think it's always clinical counseling. And that's not what it is. One of the things, well, there's times when we have some real situations that are here, but career counseling. As a school right now, it would be great if we can meet with every grade 10 kid and do a skill builder, kind of similar to what we did through career cruising. And then students can match up what they are interested in, what it takes to get to these occupations, what the prerequisites are, everything to how much money you make in this profession, to job, what's the outlook on the jobs in Alberta. At Fort High, because our population was a third, we did have this opportunity to meet with 400 kids. So the goal here is something similar that we did before, is that students will get in grade 10 a sit-down meeting, a one-to-one, not the assembly type thing where it's just presentation based and kid kind of one ear out the other, or where they're not comfortable asking questions. But one of the things we're moving towards, and we're not there yet, is that when students enter Sal at grade 10, just coming to this building, it's a transition in grade 9. And I know for the Lakeline parents, kids are together K to 9, and all of a sudden you come in and it's a huge building with 12 to 1,300 kids. But what we want to get to that point is to have that first meeting in grade 10, another one in grade 11, and then grade 12. Okay, where are we at? Because things change, and sometimes it's that spark where all of a sudden it clicks, and that's when it gets real neat, where kids come to the office and say, Mr. Sandu, this is what we want to do. Okay, let's set you up an appointment. But what you're going to find though in November, and we're going to be running our first grad meeting kind of third week. Stay tuned for that. But we're going to do a presentation though too on post-secondary. What we're doing as a school, obviously it's with COVID, we don't have U of A, Grand McEwen, University of Calgary, UBC coming into the school, so there's lots of virtual meetings. But what we need to get into the community, and that's why it's good to meet today, is that we want students to make individual times. They just come down to guidance and they say, I want to talk about post-secondary. I want to talk about trades. I don't know what I want to do, but I just want to talk. And we're going to be blitzing our announcements, our social media when we come back after break. Because with our increase in counseling, we want that one-to-one time. And that one-to-one time is great. Even for those kids that have no clue what they want to do, at least the conversation starts, as I know it's happening in your households, but that's what we need more of, conversations targeted. And although we're the biggest school in the division, we got to bring it down where it's one-on-one and then it's follow-up. It's a 3-year follow-up. But that's where we want to go. We're not quite there yet, but we will be there one day soon.
I think it's really a good idea, Sonny, to start talking about when in the Sabre scene to let parents know, because then we can ask them, hey, have you set up that appointment? Like we redirect and say, hey, we want all the kids to do this. So ask your kid, have you done this, right? Because a lot of them are like, eh.
Yeah. No, and I think part of it though too, we talk about milestones and we're finishing up another month. We're almost done a quarter. And it's a big accomplishment for all schools, right? Especially with what we're facing and with COVID. But November is the month where we start to communicate out this part of it. This is the next phase of our rollout. But when we talk about high school transitions, it doesn't start in May of the grade 12 year. It's too late there, right? But what we want to start doing is the grade 10. And for some, it's a quick 20-minute meeting, but then we're really following the student through grade 12 and seeing where the student's at. And the kids are developing and growing and learning and maturing. And sometimes their goals change, but we want to be right alongside with them. So that's kind of...
Tasha has a question about, is there something similar for grade 12? Like, I think, are you meeting with the grade 12 students as well to do this?
That's exactly it, right? When we blitz our messaging, that's exactly what's going to happen. Is we want our grade 12 students to come forward. Now, we can't force them to, right? As parents, they're getting to an age 17, 18. Well, maybe they're okay, or maybe they already have a plan. Maybe they don't need our assistance. But this is something we're working backwards. Our grade 12 are a priority if we get a wave of people coming in to 11 and 10. But by the end of the year, and depending what scenario we're in, right? It's tough to predict next week with the province and with what we're facing in education. But absolutely, we want grade 12s to come sit down. And please know, we do have lots of students that do come. But part of this school council meeting is for parents to be better informed as to how we can work collectively and as a team to make sure we're all doing our part to get our kids adjusted and ready for life after high school.
Perfect. I'm wondering if when we give those presentations to students, whether they could be Facebook Live or if they could be somehow shared with parents too, right? Because we can't even invite the parents to those kind of things. So can we give them the information in another way?
Yeah, and post-secondaries are planning their presentations as we speak, but I think, the virtual format, like I don't think it'll be during the day, right? Just because kids are in classes, but presentations will be after school for parents to be able to hear. In fact, I got a meeting, I think on next Wednesday with a student, with a parent on the speaker, on the screen, just to go over NATE and what it looks like getting into business and how to apply. So we got a good success team here and MIN guidance, and we all work collectively and kind of roll up our sleeves, work in the trenches together. But no, I think it's important for you to also, Jackie, to your point, to hear what post-secondaries are saying as well. Yeah.
And because there isn't something like, your future, your voice, or it's a matter of choice, if we don't have the opportunity to go walk around a ballroom and talk to people, how are we going to get the information out to parents? I think we're going to have to be a little creative this year, and the post-secondaries are going to have to be creative. I think everyone's used to digital now and virtual, and so how we share that out with parents, especially parents who can't always attend, right?
Absolutely.
For one reason or another.
Yeah, and we've got to get those students that don't have as strong a voice, or for parents that maybe don't understand as much. We want to break it down, and even a one-to-one, or let's sit down and talk, or what do we do? I mean, it's similar for our IB. Our IB numbers 10 years ago were quite low, and you're starting to see a high number of kids go into our honors programming. And full IB is very difficult, but we have a lot of partial IB kids. And so when I talk about the number of kids and we've been talking a lot in this meeting about data, right? Data helps us guide. It kind of shows us where we have holes and what to target. But again, with high school transitions, We can see the data. I think, top of my head, 2010, when we ran the data, it was about 17% were going directly into university year one. I don't have the data for the last couple of years yet, but it's going to be neat to see. I know the average age of the first year university student is 20.7 from what a Grant McEwen recruiter shared with me. And that's for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, I think part of it is the competition getting in, hence why achievement is so important. Also tuition, right? Rise in costs and kids having to pay and work before they can go in. So other questions or comments or ideas?
I think I'm going to move us on because we've done school education plan goals, and I look at my reports being 7:30. So I want to make sure that I can get people out around 8 because that's kind of what we've talked about. But if you have other questions, you can put them in the chat. It's a good lead into be on the agenda, which is post-secondary preparation. So I know Sunny can talk about that. One of the things, like from a parent perspective, I have one in grade 12 that was essential as she applied to university was to set up a MyPass account. And so she did come home at one point and say, hey, we have to do this. And we did it, thankfully, because we really needed access to that information in order to apply. So applications were all done online. She applied on a Saturday and heard back on a Tuesday. So I told her I think it took me longer to actually mail my application into the university than it took her to actually hear back. So it's, I just thought as we're going through that process, it would have been really interesting just to kind of know what to expect. So, and from what I understand, most of the post-secondaries, the major post-secondaries in Alberta are all part of this one online system. And so you log into that system, I think it's Apply Alberta, and you apply from there. So you enter all your marks, which you need from the MyPass account. So that would be the advice I have to the grade 10 and 11 parents, is if you don't have that MyPass account, is that you log in and get that, because the government has to send you a confirmation code of some kind. And that we also used her My Digital ID, which we had set up because she'd had a COVID test in the summer. So those would be things that I think would certainly make it easier to apply. That from a parent perspective, understanding that. So I don't know what else you want to add to that, Sunny.
Yeah, no, MyPass has been here for probably about 4 years now, maybe 4 or 5 years. But absolutely, we assist, we help our system register our grade 12s by the end. To my mind, even last year, everyone's got MyPass. Some are a little bit more tech savvy and can figure it out themselves. But similar to anything, if students have any issues, we come to the office, come to guidance, we'll walk them through. But yeah, how to access your grades, how to apply to post-secondary, you got to have MyPass. And to my mind, more, I don't see any issue with grade 12s last year not having it. We kind of walked them through it with parents as well. But good point, Jackie. That's something that, if there's any issues, and Krista put it right in there.
Yeah.
She signs students up for MyPass account with immediate access.
That's phenomenal. And as a parent, that's good to know that if you go to apply and you need this, that the kids can do that and get that, rather than waiting however long it takes the government to send you that form. So yeah. That's awesome. So what other questions do people have? Like Sunny hit, I think, on a whole bunch of this post-secondary preparation under the school education plan. It kind of all melds into one. But are there other questions that parents really wanted to know that we can either do now, or we can start to, because this is going to be, I think, a theme that comes out throughout the year, as well as what do parents need to know. I know there were a couple people who said they came for this, so I want to make sure that they got the information that they want to. So where, I know that U of A opened, their application opened earlier, a couple weeks ago, I think. I don't know about the others. And what was interesting, as a parent, that I found out when we were going to, because I dragged my poor kid for like years to that post-secondary fair, is one of the post-secondary people told us apply early, because they take people based on if you are qualified and in order. So they had a kid who applied to engineering who had like a 98% average, but they'd already filled the program. He was quite late applying and he didn't get in. So marks are important, but so is applying early was another thing that I think is really important for parents to know. Okay, that's good. And so if there's other stuff that you want to know, we're happy. Oh, where do you find out if it's based on marks or who gets applied first? So what they told me is they'll have a baseline mark. I don't know that they ever published this is the mark that you need to get in. It sometimes will depend, but they'll have a baseline mark, and then they'll take people who have those marks on a kind of on a first come first served basis in a lot of programs. And so I would say if you are looking at that, probably reaching out to the register of that faculty in that institution, they'd be able to tell you more. But that's what they told us, certainly at U of A, was the way that they admitted people.
Yeah, you guys just know this though, that when we do our grad meeting, we're doing a grad meeting like third week, like I said before, we're going to be doing a 45-minute post-secondary specific, because again, it's technically still October. But on that day though, we're going to talk about these sort of things. But I think just a note of caution as well, and we tell students, a lot of times students will get conditionally accepted, but until your marks are official, sometimes it's a false sense of, right? So again, third week in November before our grad meeting, we will be talking about post-secondary and applying, and talking about this sort of apply early to some people don't open up till later on as well. And absolutely, Chris has talked about making appointments, guidance department to speak with grade counselor, but when we return, we're really going to be intentional about this messaging. Perfect, thanks. So we know, when is that meeting, Sunny? Third week in November. You haven't set the meeting, right? I don't want to set the date right now, just because we will do that in the next week. But we have an idea, but I don't want to get that out yet. Just want to just make sure a couple things, but it'll be kind of between the 15th and 25th of November. Perfect. Thank you, Krista, for monitoring the chat and answering these questions. That's so helpful. Absolutely. Okay, now we're making good time. Awards night. I know this is, or yeah. I guess it's not awards night. It's awards something. Yeah, so this is what we're going to be doing here on this. Ultimately, we know the importance some kids, when they reach their goals, to celebrating their achievements. Lots of schools aren't doing things, and we understand with reentry document and safety. For our current grade 10s and 11s who have achieved, we are going to celebrate their achievements on Friday, November 27th. And again, this is something that will come out here shortly. And ultimately, we're going to do it for those grade 12 parents, or for those last year who had a chance to, or others who had a chance to see our video. We're going to be doing it in the theater and live streaming it. Now, there won't be any guests or parents able to attend live, but we will live stream it. We will be within our AHS guideline cohorting, but we feel it's important for our students to, it could be the only award they ever receive. But we are going to do something for our current students. Unfortunately, for our graduated grade 12 students, we will be mailing out their certificate. It's just too difficult. To get the kids back. Historically, 1 in every 4 kids, 25% roughly, have been able to come back to the school. But with many restrictions, the EAPS high schools, for that matter, to my understanding, will be mailing out the graduated grade 12 certificates. But we are in the works of celebrating our current grade 10, 11. So that'll be our awards day. Current grade 11 and 12s, right? Last year's grade 10 and 11s? Sorry, our 2019-20, okay. Yeah, 10s, 11s, 11s, and current 11s and 12s. Thanks for the correction. So that's got a plan on that day, and it's awards day, not night. Awards day, perfect. Does anyone have questions about that? Will the students who are studying remote be able to participate in the awards? Absolutely, absolutely. They're, whether a student is in class, obviously there are students, but online there are students still. And so the students that are currently, online will get that invitation to come. It's all based on comfort level. I'm going to be talking about our data and what it looks like for Q2. We do have some families and students that are immunocompromised. If students are comfortable, come back. Absolutely, we'd love to see them on November 27th. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do to we had quite a big discussion at Alberta School Council's at our board meeting the other night about that. And there are some schools who've said, you're virtual, you're not part of our community, we don't want anything to do with you. And so I value the fact that you've said that they're still your students and they have a home. So
yeah,
that's good. Are there any other questions about awards? Perfect. So I asked Sunny just to kind of do a bit of a recap debrief about how Q1 went and what they might have learned and looking forward to Q2. Certainly we're not used to this quarter system. Normally we'd be halfway through a semester. So it's different, and just there might have been some lessons learned or things that might look different in Q2, or maybe we just nailed Q1 and we're gonna totally go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we talked about achievement, right? We're ever evolving. I think, you know, good schools, you're always tweaking, you're always reflecting. It's part of our practice. You know, I'll give one example. Q1, as we know, the weather for the most part has been really, really good, right? And we know Monday is currently expected to be 13 and Tuesday 9. With 2 classes at 172 minutes, it really allowed our students to get outside. Our teachers would take them out on breaks, go for a walk, just like it was a grade 1 class, right? And be able to socially distance, stay safe, but take their masks off, right? And next week, I think we're all above 0. But what happens when we return after break, right? And so that's an adjustment that we're planning right now, because we know to sit for 172 minutes with a mask on, it's not easy. And we need to make sure that kids get breaks in a safe manner. So, you know, that's an adjustment. We're looking at a kind of a winter wonderland. Do we get the propane heaters outside, you know, and stay safe? We have some targeted areas where kids can go for a walk, always with their teacher, right? We're not saying, okay, kids, go outside. You know, the kind of teacher lead. So, you know, that's what happens, right? Q1 and 4 will look similar with the weather, but 2 and 3, we need to be strategic. And so we are planning some things. And, you know, in the second quarter, our next parent council, I'll talk about more strategies we are using to make sure kids get their break. You know, I think Heather asked that question last school council meeting about how are the parents able to give feedback on their quarter, and that was a great point, because one of the things when we get you know, to the end of next week, you know, we shut down. Well, not all of us. We have diploma exams over November break, so we'll be administering some of those. But we are going to send some Q1 and the, you know, the 2 classes. You know, I think I spoke last time as well. We are looking, you know, at unit exams in the disciplines. How did the class do? And I was talking to one teacher, and he's seen the highest result on a unit exam. Now, it's not just based on a quarter system. You know, was it a strong class? Was the literacy levels high? Lots of factors that go into it. But you know what? There are days where it is challenging, right? Absolutely, with 172 minutes for kids to be sitting. But even before this, you know, 86 minutes is a long time. But one of the components too, and Jackie, just like you said before, I'm tying in a few points.
That's fine.
Over 80, but you know, for Q1, you know, we were at 94% roughly, you know, 93, 94 with kids that were online. Well, in class, obviously 93, 94, and then kind of that 6% that went, you know, to online. What we're seeing now, like the division did send out intent, right? Like, what do you choose to do? Are you choosing to return to school in class, or are you choosing to be online? So we don't have all our numbers in quite yet. And I don't want to give hard deadlines, because at SAL, we're always going to take care of kids and not be bound by the deadline. You know, if a student comes back midway through November break, says, hey, you know what, I registered for online, but I want to come back, we're not going to be like, oh, you missed a deadline. We're always going to take kids back, and vice versa. We always want to make a plan, because factors in life are changing. We're in a crisis, and we understand how stressful it is for families. But what we're seeing is about 91% for Q2 will be in class, and you know, the other 9% will go on online. Now at SAL, that's a pretty high number. You know, when I talk to, you know, my last school at Fort High, they're in the 80s pretty much. We see results at Edmonton. You know, some are, I think, you know, Edmonton Catholic, Edmonton Public released their data collectively. I don't know if it's a high school thing, but we're still at high number of in-class learners. You know, I do understand, you know, with the cases we had, how did that affect parents making the decision? And, you know, and one of the pieces is though too, you know, we get calls here and say, Mr. Sandu, what do you recommend I do? And my communication back to parents and to students is that if you have an inkling of anxiety, right, or fear, then my recommendation is to go online. And I say that for this reason, and we all know it as adults, we are going to have COVID. There's close to 500 schools in Alberta with cases. Now, we were working feverishly, pardon the pun, maybe that's not the best word to use right now, in trying to keep our kids safe, right? And we're, you know, we're at our doors and we're trying our best. And we're going to get, as Superintendent Ligori said, things mostly right. But I cannot guarantee that there's going to be no cases here. We had a good run of 6-7 weeks, but we are the biggest school with the highest number. And when you look at the cases and the number of kids, it's actually very quite low. And so I guess ultimately, you know, if there's immunocompromised individuals at home, you know, we understand the rationale for online. The interesting factor is this, though. After we had cases, you know, we didn't have parents saying, what's going on? I think, to be honest with you, we didn't get calls. You know, I got about 5 calls maybe and saying, hey, like, you know, is everything okay? And how's it going type thing. But it was not pervasive. But what is the notion that if you are part of a cohort or a contact trace and AHS has identified that you have to self-isolate, well, you got to self-isolate. So for those kids playing rec hockey, rec soccer that do stuff outside, that's something that some kids are like, I don't want to take a chance if I'm part of that group. Now for us here at Sal, you know, ultimately all of our kids came back last week, and but we had about roughly 85 students and 4 staff that were part of the group. So I think ultimately reflecting on Q1 and even now preparing, making sure on our PD day, we did a lot of work around Brightspace, because the simple fact is this: if a teacher is identified as a cohort along with that class, if they're able to, they will teach the class from home, like meaning that they're not sick and unable to. If that would happen, then we would have a substitute teacher that would take the class on. But I'm going to use one example. So a Physics 20 class here was identified as a group. Teachers able to teach from home, you know, that Physics 20 class, and has just an awesome platform. So awesome to my mind that the class came back, wrote the same unit test, and didn't skip a beat. But that same teacher has a second class, right? And we were fortunate that we had the resident expertise in the building to come in. The teacher came in and taught that Science 30 class, right? So ultimately what we're doing in preparing for Q2 is making sure that staff are aware of their responsibility if they have to get quarantined and have to self-isolate, and making sure that they're, to the best of their ability, up to speed with Brightspace. You know, we're lucky to have an awesome assistant principal team here, right? So Krista's on here, and Krista was able to work with, you know, math students that were, that was another class. We had math, foods, and physics, and an English IB class. But, you know, really it's a team effort. And I think the reflection is, though, too, we are adjusting our syllabi. Our first day back, when we give out the syllabi to students, we will have specific points in about if we have to go to scenario 2 or 3, or if we have to self-isolate, this is how we're going to rock and roll. And ultimately, though, too, making sure kids know, hey, how do you log in? We were fortunate at the high school to get a bit of an extension to use Google Classroom, but that extension is expiring now. So we need to make sure that our staff are up to speed with Brightspace. So for me as principal, PD day, we had a group session, but then I was also able to, with the increase in money allocation that Sal got, because our enrollment was higher from our weighted moving average, and with the federal grant, we were able to bring in a teacher, Joe Tompkins, who teaches aviation, and absolutely knocking it out of the park with Brightspace. So for me, after our PD day, it was on October 9th, I also put out to staff, if you want one-on-one help, one-to-one, right, let me know. And Joe was able to work with all of our staff, because we know how, you know, it can be, you know, comfort levels with technology is all over the place, you know, kind of in the world. But, you know, staff were able to get, yeah, there's online sessions, online tutorials. We did a group session. But I think one thing unique to Sal was the one-to-one, taking 3 hours, and then we as administrators would cover the class. So going into Q2, they'll be absolutely talking about on the first day, first 2-3 days, about our safety protocols. pedagogy of learning, which is very important, but what does happen if your class needs to self-isolate. So yeah, I talked about how to transition between in-person and online, but sometimes even if families have missed a deadline, they just call the school and then we make a plan. It's not ideal if it comes in between a quarter because it's tougher to do that. But we're always working. We don't want to say no here. We want to work and say, okay, let's make a plan. Let's figure this out together. Kind of recap quarter one. One thing I will say in closing is that, final exams, we understand that process is important. We understand that routine is important. And that's why we're so excited to see our students come back in September. It was hard from March to June to see them all online, and that sort of thing. So while we value the importance of writing exams, note though too, for those quarantine classes that didn't have the same capability, I have green lighted the ability to and going back to blueprinting, if we didn't teach this, we cannot assess this. So for the vast majority, it's going to be, final exam, unit exam, but we need to embrace our professional judgment, our conversations, observations, and products, which are exams. But there's lots of flexibility because we do know, some kids were quarantined outside of school, but they still had to obviously miss school. And if a kid missed 2 weeks of classes under a quarter system, that's like a month in a semester system. So it's not drill and grill and a kid's going to come on the exam and has failed. We are absolutely going to take a look at every kid. How do they achieve? And we are adjusting some exams because of what we faced here. And guys, I'm going to say it straight up. There could potentially be more cases. We had a good run, but there's certain things out of our control. We can control the day, but we cannot control certain things that happen, at night or on the weekends or just, what's happening in the province right now. So that's kind of a re-entry update. Any questions before I go to the last point? I've done a lot of talking today, so my apologies for talking so much. But if any questions before I get to E and clarification on notification for quarantine cases.
So just making sure that parents are aware, I'm sure that anyone in a diploma course came home quite excited that the government has made it optional. And what I was really impressed was it wasn't optional depending on what the school wanted to do. It's optional depending on what the student and the parent decide. So if a student and parent decide that that child wants to write the exam, it's up to them. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I can't imagine there's anyone writing who would write a diploma who wouldn't have come home and told their parents, hey, guess what? But yeah, mine was pretty happy too. She's in Math 30-1, so she was pretty thrilled to not have to write her math diploma.
Yeah, sorry, Jackie, just a quick note on that too. And Krista oversees our exams and does a wonderful job. But kids can opt in out at any time. So we're here on the Monday, Tuesday of the break as well, along with next week. But some kids might say, hey, I'm writing it. And last minute, family chooses, hey, maybe not, but vice versa as well. So we will have we kept our order. We will be prepared like this week, and then I'm going to put in the parent saver seeing this message exactly. We're going to get a rough idea. Talking about Barclay at Facey, it's similar here. It's about 20% that are choosing to write.
Wow.
We don't want to sway decision. I think it's a great opportunity. Similar to that example I gave about Physics 30. Kid, take the course, take it. Don't worry, right? And so we do have some kids that are going to write it, and good on them. But we also have kids that don't want to write it, and good on them too. So the choice is absolutely awesome. And that's a good question, Dulcie. How, if they don't write, will this affect their status entering university? U of A came out and said we were taking their final mark, with or without diploma exam type thing. It's the final mark that shows up on their transcript through my pass. But what we don't know quite yet is out of province schools. And again, I'm hesitating to comment on their behalf yet. I think when we get to that third week in November, we'll have that much more information, just because this is the time now where we're going to start to roll out. So good question, Dulcie, but U of A and local universities are coming out with, we are taking the final mark regardless of diploma.
Yes, I think most of the Alberta institutions came out with, it's pretty tough for them to say we require a diploma exam when Alberta Education has said it's optional, right? So.
I think the other part though too, while we've had a few cases, you look at some of the schools, it's been devastating across Alberta. 600 cases out, cases in the 20s, right? 23 cases or 12 cases or 13 cases. So I think we always have to remember we are in a pandemic, we're in a crisis. While rigor is good, the stress that society is facing, and that's why the voluntary exams is good. And ultimately for our 10s and 20s, right, we will take care of them. We will see where they are. If they miss 2 weeks of classes, fare is not always equal, right? We understand that as adults. So we want to differentiate the summative assessments and differentiate what they see moving forward. Any other questions before I go to my last point?
So what I asked the school reentry update was more around, because we've all gotten the email about there's cases at Sal. I know I've gotten them about other schools, and there's sort of, I think, some confusion around the order that notifications go out and some of the wording. And Sonny and I had a long talk about this. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows what the process is, because the way it's worded currently, it's like you will be contacted, or it isn't necessarily that you have been contacted and already known. So I know I got that email. It was first actually at one of the elementaries, and then sat there and waited and refreshed my email over and over for an hour and a half, wondering if the second email was coming. And so we talked a little bit about that. And so I just want to make sure that everyone is clear on kind of process around that and how students move, if they have to self-isolate or if they have to quarantine, depending if they have symptoms, or if a whole class is moved. So what that all looks like, the logistics of it all.
Yeah, I'm going to tie a few points in, and just know this Google Meet ends at 8, like it'll time out at 8. So I'll be very strategic to finish here right at 7:30 to move to the cost report. But just want to give a little bit of background. So, schools opened early September. There's a couple cases early on in EAPS. And, I talked to the individuals at the schools, and, one was a former school of mine. And at that time, though, too, AHS had the resources, the ability to make cold calls, phone calls. Your child is identified, they need to self-isolate. Now, we know as a province, September, we didn't, it was fairly manageable, but then all of a sudden you've seen this huge spike, okay? Now, I'm going to tie in the communication, etc. By the time, ultimately I got the call on Thanksgiving at 11 a.m. type thing that, hey, you know what, you got a case. At that time, it had already shifted in the kind of 5 weeks. AHS does not have the ability to make phone calls. And really from that time, which is close to 3 weeks ago now from our first case, it was emailable, right? AHS will be emailing you. We've been good here now for almost 2 weeks now. We had that real kind of wave in the middle. But ultimately, the point is, the letter first goes out to those families identified as a contact trace. So I get the call from David Timniak, where it came from Mark from AHS. So it's go time. So what happens, I'll just kind of walk you through this example. So our admin team, we come to school, and there's a bunch of documentation that we got to do. We are agents of public health now, plain and simple. So what we have to do is we have to identify the contact trace. How does the student or individual get to school? Lunchtime, what cohort was there? The 2 classes, did the student take the bus? And there's heavy documentation we do that we put that goes to AHS. There's some Google Forms we do. And then ultimately, we request for permission to proceed with our communication. And, the way it works is that those students that are needing to self-isolate, we send that letter first, right? And I think part of it is that early on, it said, okay, AHS will be contacting you. Yeah, early September, it's by phone, but then it's by email. And you see in Southern Alberta what's happening. AHS isn't even contacting the school. Right? They just don't have the resources. We have a lot of empathy for AHS because they don't have the resources to do all the work required right now. So where we are currently, but this is not set in stone because it is changing based on the resources we all have collectively, is that the letter goes out. So when I talk about 80 to 85 students that were identified or collectively with our staff, the letter goes out. I call our staff first, say, hey, this is a situation, right? You're going to have to teach from home. The letter first goes out to the group of 80, 85 saying you've been in close contact with, you've been identified that you need to self-isolate for 14 days. AHS will get a hold of you. Once we send that letter out, Jackie, that's when the letter goes out to all of our families. And in there, and I understand what you're saying, it should state that you would have already received, and I think the communication is getting sharper, you would have already received another notification prior to this if you are required to. Now, Jackie, yeah, like our conversation was there. I didn't receive any calls here as a school. I know that not everyone calls the principal, but the letters are going to continue to adjust as time goes on. We all hope that we get better as a province and our numbers decline and that we don't have cases. But again, it's tough to predict moving forward. And so really what happens is that the first notifications currently, they go out to that cohort group. And then at the very end, that final letter goes out. And again, some of the wording is complex and maybe it's a little bit too complex, but it should be stating absolutely that you would have already received a notification if your child was affected. But even to that point, as a parent, what if you have, multiple kids in different groups? And I know that, for Lakeland and Sal, there's one of the communities though that was hit pretty hard. So we're always looking for feedback. I did talk to communication, Jackie, and those are form letters as well. But there's a few tweaks I want to make moving forward. But I hate thinking about moving forward. It's like I'm excited to make tweaks to something that we really don't want to see in schools, right? But Jackie, to your point, I talked to Dave, I talked to Laura, I talked to Corey. I said, there's a little bit of confusion. We got to tweak some of the wording on it because it's a little bit confusing. So that's kind of where we're at right now with our cases. But moving forward, we'll see where the province is and then we'll adjust accordingly.
Perfect.
Any questions for me about communication or any ideas or thoughts or input for me? All right.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much. That was certainly a lot. It was ambitious to maybe put all of that on the agenda, but it was, I think there's a lot of really important information that parents need now, in addition to kind of our legal requirements to talk about some stuff. So that's good. So Jen, you want to talk about Committee of School Councils?
Sure, thanks. I won't take up too much time, so if anybody has questions, feel free to contact me. This was new for me, being on the Committee of School Councils. There was a meeting on October the 7th. It's the first Wednesday of every month. There were representatives from quite a few schools. There were staff from central office. A couple of trustees were there. There were very few representatives from high school. So I represented Sal. Jackie was there because she was on the board. And I think there was someone else that was representing basically all of our Drawson. And I really think that was about it. So if anyone is interested, there were a couple of positions up for grabs for the board. There was an election of the chair and the vice chair. And those both went to parents that were elementary parents. But if you are feeling ambitious and want to have your voice heard as a high school parent, the secretary position is open. So there were over probably 40 of us in the meeting. I learned quite a bit. So like I said, if you feel like contacting me, please do. They talked quite a bit about the Alberta School Councils Association. And if you want more information on how school councils run, resources about schools, you can Google them, and they host anything from school council engagement. They have meetings on Mondays, which is just an open agenda where parents can join in and ask questions about how schools run, kind of a free form meeting, it's my understanding, or webinar Wednesdays that they host workshops and that sort of thing. So I have not been doing that. So I don't know, Jackie, if you want to speak on that, if you've done that or not.
I haven't. They moved to doing that when we did the pandemic because they couldn't go do a bunch of the in-person meetings. What they have they have one during the day, and then they have one kind of about 8 o'clock at night, so that you could get the younger kids in bed and still attend, so that they could hit kind of people who could attend. Hopefully, either one.
So to be completely transparent with everyone, the reason why I wanted to get involved is because I wanted my voice heard about athletics. I think that's what I talked about last week. I have a daughter in junior high who's very much involved in drama and musical theater. However, she still gets to participate because it's a school course. There are kids that are mechanics or in band, and they still get to participate because it's a school course. Athletics is kind of being pushed up on the wayside. It's not phys ed, it's not cross sport. Athletics, the team sports are different. So I learned Mark Ligori and Sandra Stoddard, who are superintendent and associate superintendent, spoke quite a bit about the reentry process, and Sunny captured basically everything that they talked about. So when it was my turn to ask a question, I did ask about athletics. I'm a coach. I coach at Sal. My husband's a coach. My son is heavily involved in athletics, and we're hurting over here, to be completely honest. We miss it so much. So I directly asked Mark and explained my concerns about why athletics aren't going and why I felt that we need school sports. This, I feel, helps kids cohort. If we have control over where our kids are, we know where our students leave school, participate in a sport, then go home, versus outside intermingling, mixing cohorts and that sort of thing. Mark recognized my concerns. He also is an athlete. He did recognize my concerns. He expressed, though, at the time, at the beginning of October, the district's main focus was academics. What he did state, which really caught my ear, was that there is one principal, one school in the entire district that is pushing for athletics. And we are fortunate that is our school. So thank you, Sunny. I needed that validation myself, and I got it. So thank you, Sunny, and your admin team and your staff that say they want to coach, they want athletics to go ahead. I appreciate that you have our backs on that one, and you have our students' best interest in mind. So at the time, Mark had said that it was going to be reviewed on an ongoing basis. And then I think everyone got an email stating that for now, athletics will still be postponed. But I'm still going to keep pushing. We got to keep moving forward. We got to learn to live with this and move forward. So that was the big takeaway. There was a lot of discussion at this meeting about elementary schools and junior highs, because that's who's being represented. So if you have any concerns, or if you would like a question asked, I'm not afraid to get up and ask questions. So fire me an email, send me what else can parents do regarding sports? So Brenda, my big suggestion as a parent is to get involved and send emails. We know now that we have our admin on our side, but I think central office needs to hear that more often. I think the power of the parent is huge, and this is just my opinion as a parent. Maybe people don't agree, but I think the more we talk amongst each other, the more we support each other and let Central know that our kids are hurting. We hear about mental health all the time. We know our kids don't talk. They need to do, our athletes need to do. So we need to let Central know that our kids are hurting, and there are safe ways to bring back sports. AHS is supporting, like our government is supporting sports. So I feel as a parent, we need to put pressure. So that was my big takeaway. I think Sunny touched base on everything else, especially with the reentry plan. But I don't know, if anyone has any questions, let me know.
My only suggestion is oh, sorry, I was echoing a bit. But when you go, just talk about instead of saying you're a parent representative, say you're the representative for Salisbury, and that we've talked about these things at our school council, and they've asked you to bring it forward, and that will give you maybe not necessarily more weight, but like legitimacy about so that I don't think it'll change Mark's mind, but then he doesn't ever get to say, oh, it's just a parent, like, because we work on the representative model. So say like you're the representative from, and that, we've had this conversation, we had a large conversation at school council, just sort of, that helps you. I think sometimes they tune things out in that way. It helps them to not maybe tune things out as much. Not that I said that publicly.
No, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I do know Mark, and he's well aware that, as he and I are both athletes, that this is not going away. So I think when he sees me coming, he just sees me coming.
Yes, but this way he has to like heed you, because part of our bylaws are that we listen to the representatives who have been sent on behalf of the councils.
Sorry, so Leanne and Brenda are both saying that they've done that and it seems to be falling on deaf ears. Use the mental health angle as well. Leanne has emailed Mark several times. Yeah, Leanne, I've done it too. I've emailed Annette Hubick, our trustee. This is why I wanted to get involved. So I will absolutely, next week is our next meeting. I will absolutely use the angle that we had this discussion in our parent council meeting. If somebody else has a suggestion, I would say keep putting pressure on Mark. I don't know who else, Sunny maybe, or Annette, do you have any suggestions?
Tough. Mark is the one ultimately who makes the decision.
He does. Yes, he does. It's not, he did say that the decision comes down from them and not from the trustee. So Annette's emails can get flooded, but ultimately it does come from central office. It comes from Mark.
Yes. Oh. Thanks. So Sunny in your principal's report. And so the way when I talked to Sunny about this is it should just be information. The principal's report, anything is sort of like a synopsis of what's been going on in the school, that anything he would want robust discussion and engagement on, that we would put it as an actual agenda item. So hopefully the principal's report I know has been really long. We did it with Mrs. Allen and with Sunny. Have been longer in the past, so hopefully they'll be shorter because we've had a whole bunch of engagement and discussion at the end, and we just kind of throw a bunch of the reports at the very end when we're kind of like tired. So that's sort of why the agenda is formatted a little bit the way it is. Yeah, absolutely. I know I did talk a lot, and I talked about stuff like awards already, Bright Space. So I'm going to hit on one point, and it's pervasive, obviously, in the South community, and it's athletics. And just knowing, moving forward, similar to the letter that Superintendent Larry said, the next time it's going to be revisited is November 16th. And I will be advocating the same as doing before. Guys, I understand. I mean, I think it's part of it. It's not just an athletic issue. Is it the chance to do a musical theater? Is the chance to have jazz band before school? There's inherent risk more than any other time in my life. Going through COVID, we talk about 172 55-minute lunches, 172. How sustainable is this when we know that there's so many things that bring kids to school that are outside of social 20-1? And you know, I mean, for Jackie, you and I were talking before, for Kayla to burn energy in phys ed class, so what happens next quarter? And I think the part that, and I've talked to lots of other principals trying to rally the group, I think it's not just the coaching. You don't have to be a basketball, football, volleyball coach, but for 45 minutes after school, we're not playing games yet. And that's the point I've been trying to really hammer home. It's about, I will be here after school, but Krista will be after school one day. And parents make that call. If we're in a cohort, everyone signed the COVID-19 questionnaire, and you know, while sometimes there's no signs, but we're taking all this other risk. We got 1,200 kids in the building. We got some class at 36 for 172 minutes while they're masked. They're still this far away. And we have foods class going on, and we have kids eating lunches with no mask. And while I totally understand rationale, it is a superintendent decision. I just do know that when 16th comes and we have a chance to speak, we are going to continue to push for it. Because for us to just be able to open the gym, it's going to go a long ways. For us to be able to offer jazz band off the timetable, it goes a long ways. For us, for the musical theater kids to do a production, even though there might not be any people in the stands, we'll live stream, it goes a long way. We talked about school goal number 1 to start, and it's about a sense of belonging. We talked about engagement. We talked about lots of things. And it's not just what happens between 8:30 and 3:30. And so the rationale, it's not just because, you know, I coach basketball or coach volleyball, but do know though that, you know, I'll advocate for the same moving forward. And to my mind though too, it's not based on cases. The thinking is not changing, because even when I look at our cases, there's nothing that we could have done differently to prevent. And moving forward, you get cases, we'll deal with them. But when our premier, get it, our CMO, our education ministers talked about cases and we know where it's at, you know, I do understand, like I said. But I just want to let this group know that when November comes, quarter 2, when I get an opportunity to speak,
I will advocate accordingly, because that's what really as a community we want to do moving forward. So that's all, because I know that's been the biggest thing here so far at Sal, and the most questions. It's about athletics. So that's kind of my principal report.
Thanks, Sunny, and you know, again, thank you for your advocacy in especially around the idea that we're educating the whole student, that there's things that bring kids to school other than academics and post-secondary. They go, and that's part of it. But there's things that you know, I talked to one friend, and she said her kid went to Basie, and she just said, if it weren't for the horticulture program was what got my kid to school. She did the rest begrudgingly, but it was what got her out of the house. And so knowing that there are things outside of academics that get kids in the door, and the recognition of that and how we do that safely, it means a lot for me as a parent of athletes too, but also of I'm an aunt of a kid who does musical theater, and you know, those kind of things, right? So they're so important.
Well, I think just to clarify too, like part of my communication, it's not just for the high-end athlete. This is for anyone. Just open the gym, let them go, right? 30, 40 kids will do it safely. It's a small gym, everything. And yeah, I mean, I think we're all understanding the impact of physical wellness, mental wellness, and that sort of thing. So I will continue to advocate and circle back. November, we get back, and we're not too far off from our next school council meeting. So we'll continue to push. Right.
Thanks. Fingers crossed, Sunny.
Yeah.
So, Annette.
On that note.
On that note, how are you doing? Welcome.
Yeah. Oh, I know how the last presenter felt today at the meeting, coming in after we've been sitting there for 7 hours already. So I've been writing notes furiously because I had some stuff to add. Stuff happened today, and because I had my report prepared, but I've added some things. I will email it to you, and so rather than get into some of the detail that I had here, I'm going to say, like, if you're interested in the financial highlights, like, see my report. Because one of the big things, of course, happening in our schools, and yeah, I have kids at Lakeland, so my phone rang off the hook. It seemed on Thanksgiving weekend, and had a kid in isolation for a couple weeks, and you know, the whole bit, stayed healthy, so that's good. I found it interesting. I watched Dr. Hinshaw's her update on Monday, and she shared an interesting statistic though. So although our phones are ringing, they measured and they said since September, of the cases that are of 5 to 19-year-olds, so school-age children, they have determined that 6% of them contracted it in school. So it goes to show that although the cases of students are on the rise, it's more of a reflection, I guess, of what's going on in the community, as we've seen the community numbers rise. So I found that really interesting, and that I thought it was worth sharing. I backed it up and made sure. I went to the transcript and made sure I wrote that down correctly. The other thing that happened today, I don't know if you guys heard, they've released another updated screening checklist. Which I guess some parents will be happy about, because they've taken off runny nose and sniffling and whatever. I thought it off.
Sore throat.
Yeah, and sore throat. They've taken that off the mandatory 10-day isolation list. It's still go home, monitor for 24 hours. If it gets worse, stay home. If it's gets better, then you're okay to come back, and that testing isn't recommended. Obviously, it's a lot of these changes we've seen in the last couple of weeks is because the testing capacity and the contact tracing capacity of our province is starting to get really stretched. So that's why we're seeing a lot of changes in what's happening there, as far as who they're recommending to go get tested. So one thing I did find interesting though is they made the point of saying that the daily screening protocols are the previous list is still applicable to adults. So this new list is only for school age children, or like actually not just school age, because they said daycares and stuff too. So 0 to 19 or 18. So it's interesting. So I encourage you to go online, get that new updated list so that you're aware of that and what the new protocols are. One thing I did want to share with you that I heard today, that whenever there's a case in a school, eventually, not eventually, but AHS does come out and meet with the school and go over the protocols that are in place and all this kind of stuff. So that's happened in our Elk Island public schools, and in so far to date, 100% of the cases, there have been no recommendations. Like there's been no, you must change this, you should do this differently, you should do whatever. It's basically saying the protocols aren't the problem, I guess. So that's good news. But again, so it just goes to show that, there will be cases, no matter what. And we also can't even assume. I have a friend who's got a kid in the city. They're at a school. There were 4 kids in a class that got it. And I can think, oh my God, did it all spread in that class? Well, it turned out they were all at a sleepover the weekend before. So when we get news that there's, notices in a certain classroom, we can't always jump to those conclusions and think that's what's happening. And I'm sure there will be transmission, like say someday, but we can. There's a danger, I guess, in assuming. And then lastly, just on this one point, I just wanted to thank parents and staff who have been really quick to inform the division of positive test results, because in 100% of the cases so far, we have heard from the parent or the staff member before we've been contacted by AHS. It's us contacting AHS to let them know. Like they know it's somewhere in their system. It just hasn't gotten to the, oh, we're going to call you about it list yet. So what happens, they get reported a case, they call AHS, they confirm that yes, there was indeed a confirmed case with this person. And then all that contact tracing stuff begins. And originally, I guess the plan was that was all going to be AHS doing it. And that's still supposed to be the plan. But our administration has taken the approach of, once it gets to a certain time in the day, they just pull the pin. They're like, no, we don't want to wait another day to inform people and have even more risk of transmission happening, kind of thing, right? So, so we need to quarantine that class or those close contacts as soon as possible. So they're trying to be as responsive as possible, and I can only anticipate that this situation is going to get worse as AHS resources become more strained. So it's important to report. It's important to get signed up for My Health Records so that you can get faster reporting than waiting for them to call you or get the text. And so I encourage you guys to do that. And I want to appreciate it, because right now it's got, there's a stigma. There can be negative reaction towards people who test positive, and we need to remove that and just open the, pull down the barriers to make sure that we're all just trying to keep everybody as healthy as possible. So other than that, I just wanted to just hit a couple highlights. At our October 15th board meeting, the board was presented with the financial results for the year ended August 31st. And I mean, I guess it was the silver lining of the pandemic was that the division ended up in a better financial position than we had originally projected, because of quite, lowered costs, obviously, with sub costs that we would normally have at that time weren't happening. PD costs, even just the utilities costs was a few $100,000 in savings over the division. So, so that all added up to, we landed up with about a $1.5 million operating deficit, which we funded from reserves, as opposed to the almost $8 million deficit that we were anticipating. Of course, that's as of August 31st, and we've already had to make some decisions today to spend some of those savings to with our COVID response. So as I shared with you guys actually at the last meeting. So that's kind of like the overview of the main point that I wanted to bring up. I give some analysis as to why some of these numbers are at where they're at. As always, as in the past, 78% of the budget is spent on instruction, and then the next biggest thing is 12% plant operations and maintenance, 5% on transportation, 3.6% on board and system administration, and 0.6% on external services. So that could be like the architects that we had to contract to do the new school, that kind of thing. So, and again, and if you want even more detailed information than that, beyond even my report that you'll see is, as always, we have our complete packages that the board is presented with at our public meetings are posted on our website 3 days prior to our board meeting. So, if it's on a Thursday, it'll be there on the Monday, and you can see all the, they're usually about 150 page, 200 page packages, but you can zone in on the one that you're interested in. And of course, the financial reporting is very detailed. Just wanted to also mention results reviews. Of course, that was talked about what Sunny was even doing today. This is part of our accountability process and our assurance process is to hold these annual results reviews. The trustees meet with all central office departments as well as all schools. So it's about 6 extra full days that we spend in November. November is always a very busy month with this, and then we get binders this thick before to go through so that we can have some intelligent discussion when we're there. And one of the great things about it is, yes, there's the data and what is the data telling us, but it's also about some of the examples that Sunny gave tonight. It illustrates that if we just got a report without ever talking to people, we wouldn't get the stories behind the data. We wouldn't get, some of the success, see some of the trends. But by meeting with all the schools, you start to see all the trends that come up, and you kind of can go, okay, how is that going to inform how we're going to make budget decisions going forward? Are there some trouble spots that we can try and address? Are there some great successes that are happening that we can try and replicate? Those kinds of things. So that's part of the tool. And a lot of this data, it's not necessarily just about a report card. It's not how did you do? It's about how to use that information to improve things going forward. And whether that's at the division level or at the school level or, for the teacher at that classroom level, like that's the true value of data. Data just to like either give people a parade or slap them on their hands is very fleeting. It's not going to do anything. It's about learning from that and trying to move forward with it. So that's the approach I like to take, and I know that the rest of the board shares that as well. And a big integral part of the way we do things here in Elk Island Public Schools is we include parents in our results reviews as well. So and of course, it's going to be a different format this year because it'll be virtual, but that will be coordinated with your principal and your school council. And I think because it's virtual, I heard today that the link is going to be there. So, there may be possibilities for more than just, before we were kind of always limited by space in a room. There might be possibilities if there are more parents interested than just, 1 or 2 on a school council, that there might be opportunities to at least observe and take it from there. And then you can hear. I always come away from those meetings so impressed with a lot of the really intentional work that's done in the division by our leaders and by our teachers to really try and meet the kids' needs. And I always usually come away pretty inspired. And then what else did I want to say? I think that was it. Oh, other than, you talked about the importance of the connection, to development and to learning. And I was at I saw a speaker a couple years ago, and he was a brain scientist, and he really made that connection. And he said that in order to actually learn, you have to admit you don't know something. You know, so you have to be open to that, and to be open to that, you have to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable, you have to feel safe. And so that is why safe and caring and everything is so important, not only just obviously in life and making the experience good at school, but there's the science behind how it actually improves you know, learning and results that come from there. So it's quite fascinating. Anyway, that is my report.
Thank you. Yeah, any questions for Annette? No? Okay, look at that. So I know Sunny had given me the date. Sunny, is results review all day or half day?
It's moving parts, but yeah, you know what? We were going to be all day, but they've broken up the groupings now, and you know, we will be half day. It's us, Facey, Fort High, and I'm not sure if it's next step, but I'll get that information out to you. But ours will be half day. And to Trustee Hubig's point, though, absolutely, the more the merrier. It's great to have people in, listening, educating, etc. So I think our date's on the 23rd of November, but I don't have that document in front of me. But
23rd. I think you said maybe the 24th.
Yeah, you know what? I'll get that day out. But
I think it was the Tuesday, because I think I have Westboro on the Monday.
Well, no, I love the experience too. It's great to be able to communicate, talk, answer questions, seeing what other schools are doing. And I'm really looking forward to it too. So hopefully as many parents can kind of see, because it's a good activity. I know when I'm first year principal, it was a little bit nerve wracking, but now that, you know, I feel very comfortable to answer questions and also the challenges we face too. So good activity, and the trustee support is tremendously as well.
Perfect. Yes, I've been to several schools now and over several years. It's really quite a good experience and very interesting, and the trustees do a really good job of asking parents and engaging them. So we're not just, I think one principal told me one time, I think you're supposed to sit in the back and not say anything. I'm like, well, I don't do that either one of those things very well. So nope. So it was good. So,
yeah, it was originally planned for a full day, but then they realized, especially with the virtual format, that's going to be really even more fatiguing. I don't know about you guys. Some Zoom meetings can be more fatiguing than in-person meetings. And so, yeah, it's grouped by the high schools that are just 10 to 12, and then the others that are 7 to 12. So, because then again, they'll have some common issues, and they can. It's amazing how much learning happens even between them, because as busy, like, you know, it's just another great connection and capacity building opportunity when they can learn from each other's successes, or, you know, we tried this and oof, that bombed, you know, that kind of thing. So
for sure, and it's a good chance for us to connect with other school councils. So I just want to circle back to the minutes. Did anyone go back and look at them? Are they okay, or do we wait for the next meeting? I didn't get them done very quickly, so they were pretty late going. Tasha said they're okay. Anyone else look at them? Are we okay to say they're okay? Are there major objections to? They seem fine. Okay, thanks. And thanks to Karen, who did the highlighted name should be Erin. Oh, okay, thanks, Tasha. I'll write that down. Minutes. Erin. Okay. Perfect. So can we have consensus that those are accepted? If you have major objections, then you can speak up or write your name in the chat, and otherwise we'll accept those, and I'll try and get them done quicker this time. So thank you all for coming and giving us 2 hours. I know sort of 6 o'clock comes and you're like, oh, I could have a glass of wine and sit and watch TV or do something. But thanks for coming. Hopefully that the information was valuable to you. If there's other things that you want, please reach out to Sunny or to me. My email's up in the chat, and I can put it again down here. If there's something that you think is really important that we should talk about, then let me know and we can get it on the agenda, because really this meeting is about all of us and what we find valuable. So Thank you very much. And with that, we will adjourn. I didn't think an hour ago we were actually going to be able to hit 8 o'clock. So thank you. It was really good. We like front ended all of the stuff, which was always my goal, to front end it when we're energetic. So have a wonderful month, and we will see you next month.